So I've officially now finished my Unit 3 project for art and I'm on to writing my evaluation. For my evaluation, I usually write things in the back of my book, and I have a page dedicated to my evaluation. But because I wanted to experiment with new materials and different media, I thought about recording a video, uploading it to YouTube, and then recording it in my sketchbook, writing some stuff about the evaluation, but mostly recording it on this. So for this project, which was the exam piece that we had to do, we were given different words and different descriptions, and we were to pick one and then run with it with a project. I looked at journeys, collections and fusion originally, and then narrowed it down to fusions and collections. So for the main part of the project, I looked at fusion, and I didn't have as much time to finish the rest of the project because at the beginning I did actually look at fusion, then dropped it because I felt uninspired by it. I later looked at collections and then ended up looking at my strengths in art, which are drawing, designing and anything to do with styling. So then I thought about doing maybe a collection of outfits, and then in the end my idea was to do a collection of outfits inspired by Game of Thrones. The main problem that I really thought that occurred during this project was the fact that I was thoroughly uninspired at the beginning of it and found it really hard to get involved in it and to get really in with the project because I felt so uninspired. I think that would probably be the main problem, to be honest, and if I were to ever do another project again, to pick something that I was thoroughly and utterly in love with so that I could continue with it and I could do the project to the best of my ability. So the artists that I looked at were Alexander McQueen, who, because I loved all of his mythical type outfits that he designs, such as the ones with the giant stag horns, was something that particularly was one I looked at, and the dresses covered in loads of flowers was something that I really was inspired by. I also looked at Colleen Atwood, who is a famous dress designer and costume designer in Hollywood, who's worked on projects such as Alice in Wonderland, Snow White and the Huntsman, and is renowned for taking the personalities and the backgrounds of the characters that she's designing outfits for and displaying it in their costumes, which is something I was really trying to get across in my final piece, hence why I looked at her. Another artist that I looked at was Lisa Milroy, who is a collections artist. What I particularly loved about her work was that all of her work made sense and you could tell that everything that she was doing was part of a collection, which was something that was really important to me in this project. In my actual final piece, I did 5 outfits inspired by the series, inspired by 5 different houses, 5 of some of the main houses in the series, and 5 of the main female characters, because I find designing outfits easier for females rather than males for some reason. The people that I ended up looking at in the end were Marjorie Tyrell from House Tyrell, Cersei Lannister from House Lannister, Marjorie Tyrell from House Tyrell, and Daenerys Targaryen from House Targaryen, and Asha Greyjoy from House Greyjoy. What I loved about my idea was that I'm in love with the series. It was very close to my heart. I have read the majority of the books. I watch the series every Monday when it is on, and it's something that I have a lot of background knowledge about, and so when I got into the project and began designing, it kind of came easily to me to do everything, and I didn't find it as hard to, run with it as I had before when I was looking at fusions. So what I loved about the project the most was how every single house that I looked at and every single character had a completely and utterly different personality, different background, different places where they came from in the 7 Kingdoms, which meant that I could display that in their outfits and how they all look so different. But when they were together in my exam, what I did was I experimented with them in the book. I did mood boards for each of them. I wrote little things about them, and then I did a mock-up of the final piece, and then in the exam I put them all side by side, put them together in a collection and framed it. So together, when they are actually in a line, they look like they are part of the collection, but separately they look like completely different pieces of artwork, which is something that I really liked about this project. I loved experimenting with all the materials, which was probably one of my main highlights of this project. Before this project I'd never worked with watercolours, and I'd never worked with watercolour pencils, which is something I worked a lot with during this project. I've also never looked at like taking materials and designing dresses with them, and which is something that I want to do in the future. It's something I really loved and really enjoyed. The project actually made me want to take fashion and textiles at college, as this is my last project, because I would like to continue doing this, and I felt inspired by this project. I love designing all of the dresses for the project, and it's something that I thought was quite cool. What went badly during the project was probably that I ran out of materials during my exam, and something that if I was to do it again, I would have the correct amount of materials, and I would experiment more with the things that I did before the exam, because I'd spent so long looking for an idea that I didn't have as much time to experiment as other people probably did. So I would probably do that as well. On a whole, I think that the project went really well if I was to evaluate it, and it was something that I think turned out really, really well, even though some of the mock-up pieces I designed previously to the project didn't actually look the same as they did in my final piece, because obviously I ran out of time. I'd run out of some of my materials, and I had to basically, I don't know, kind of improvise with what I had at the time. And although it turned out and it looked amazing during the end, it didn't look like it did in my book, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but obviously it didn't go according to plan. So if I was to do that in the future, that's probably what I would do. I really enjoyed this project, and I enjoyed looking into the designers. I enjoyed looking at Colleen Atwood mostly, and also Game of Thrones. I did a lot of research before the project to make up for the fact that I'd missed out on a lot of time. I watched a lot of episodes of the series, I reread some of the books, and I had a marathon day where I watched all of Colleen Atwood's movies, well, the majority of them that she'd actually designed outfits for, and took some notes and stuff like that. I did some designing on the sly of different outfits. I looked at Alice in Wonderland's dresses that she wore. I looked at how they'd portrayed her outfits, and how Lisa, and about how Colleen had looked at characters, and then for example from Alice in Wonderland, Alice's blue dress, and how she'd made that different and brought it up to Alice being older. So I looked at that for some of my other characters, for example Marjorie Tyrell. I looked at her outfits in the series and how if they were more modern, this is how they would look, and if they were more McQueen based, they would look like this, for etc. Basically that's probably it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed my project, and oh yeah, very quickly, one of my main worries about the project was that people wouldn't actually get it unless they were a fan of the series, which was something I was very, very, very conscious of, because I wanted it to come up, I wanted to be easy to see what I was trying to get across with the personality, with the houses, even if somebody wasn't a fan of the show, which was something that I kind of still worry about a little bit because my work hasn't actually been marked yet. So yeah, I hope you like this video, I hope you like the project, and yeah, goodbye.